Okay, so yesterday we had the student conference. There was a lot of amazing energy in the seminar room next to us. And I kicked off proceedings. So I'm welcoming you. I'm just making a few opening remarks to set the scene for this theme today. There's 2 days that we're going to talk about tides and taps. So I opened that event with some very high level, very abstract thoughts about socio-ecological entanglements, and our place in the natural world and being separated from the natural world. And I'm going to do something different today. And I'm going to start off, I think, with some black comedy based in my own lived reality, which has to do with water services. So we're going to be looking at water law over the next couple of days and ocean and coastal law. And I mean, the fact is, if we really have to just be honest, it's a flipping mess. It is an absolute mess. The emancipatory justice potential of the Constitution has not been realized for allocation of raw water. In fact, if you look at the allocation of the racial and gender allocation of water use rights since 1994, we may even have regressed. There are serious design flaws in the National Water Act. The model for water services, which is based on a cost recovery model, is utterly unsustainable. Our water infrastructure is collapsing. I have a project with the Human Rights Commission. It's called the Water Justice Tracker, and we've been having engagements with water service authorities over the past couple of months. And, it starts off with the fact that we don't have a proper census. So any kind of planning for water services needs to have an idea of how many households do we actually have. So KZN a few weeks ago, they were saying, the undercount is like 50,000 households because they don't have reliable census information to actually get the money to provide the water services. You're sitting with a situation where the revenue base in some municipalities is less than 20%. So, that's for water services. So I just wanted to maybe amuse you with my own water travails that I'm currently dealing with in the city of Johannesburg. So when I had to go to Edinburgh earlier this year, and as I was about to leave, the day I was supposed to leave, I noticed there's a water leak at my meter outside the property. So now I know, oh my word, okay, so this is going to be an issue because the previous year I had a water leak in my property. I accepted, it's in my property, 33,000 Rand. Because we hadn't noticed that it was leaking. I accepted that it was inside my property. But then I got wise, it's outside the property, it's the municipality's responsibility. But then you have to get the municipality to actually come and fix your water meter. But I'm leaving for Edinburgh. So I sent the complaints are submitted, no follow-up, get one reference number after the other. Eventually, 10 days later, and what we had done was actually switch off our water because we knew this was likely to be a hefty water bill. 10 days later, they came and fixed the water meter, only after my partner, who's the MD of Rosebank College, completely lost it with them and offered to buy them lunch from KFC. I don't know if the lunch ever transpired, but the meter was eventually replaced. I was expecting a strange water bill, but nothing happened. I was, getting my normal monthly bill completely paid up. I'm one of the probably, 40% of customers who actually pay for water services in Johannesburg. My account is completely up to date. On Monday, I got a municipal account for 20,000 Rand for the water leak. It's very strange, reversal of all charges. You've got to try and understand and see what your average consumption was. So this, of course, does not sit very well with me. I marched myself off to the Sandton regional offices and, want to ask for a reversal of the charges based on all the evidence I have before them, the complaints, the pictures dated. No, they cannot reverse the charges. You have to log a query. And then it might take 90 days to fix, but you can make a payment arrangement. It's like, I don't want to make a payment arrangement. I didn't consume that water. I don't have a problem paying for what I did consume, but what I didn't consume, I don't want to pay. no, it's not possible. You have to go to legal office in Braamfontein. So that's my next step. So, this is just by way of illustration. If I am, as a university professor, cognizant of water law, having these feelings of powerless rage against a bullying, intractable, inefficient municipality, what is the ordinary person of the street and the indigenous people? What kind of, water more than anything else is the resource that is linked to human dignity. Electricity is important for critical infrastructure, but there's more alternatives. You need water to have a dignified life, food, education, health services, livelihoods. It's absolutely critical. And now you have these unwieldy institutions. And then to top it all, yesterday we had this event, I came home, all I wanted was a hot shower, open the taps, no water. Go into the neighborhood group, no, that there's no water. They don't really know why. But yeah, there was no water in the taps last night, but it was back this morning. So yeah. Anyway, so that's my introduction, and I've kept to time. So yes, this is a very, it's a field that cries out for systemic analysis of the issues, because the model that we've got is not working and we need drastic change. So thank you. And I'm going to hand over now to Melanie to give us the address.
Thank you. We applaud you for your courage and activism.
So thank you so much to Tracy for being our host and having us here in this wonderful venue. And thank you to all of you for joining us. Today, we are going to delve quite deeply into the issue of dysfunctional taps and all the spaces that take us to the tap. And we have so many wonderful experts who are going to be speaking today. And I'm really just very happy to see the room so full. And yesterday's student conference was incredible. And also the film Capturing Water, really spot on in terms of the kinds of issues that people are suffering in relation to water services and the politicians who are failing us. And so it's wonderful again as the incoming chair to be chairing this conference. And I'm so grateful to the wonderful executive committee that has worked alongside me and helped prepare this conference and all the different inputs that have been received. There are so many moving parts. We will acknowledge everyone on tomorrow at the AGM, but I just wanted to very briefly mention the expo that has come in. And also just to acknowledge our past expo chair, Peter Cantor, and Secretariat Wilhelmine Duplessis for handing us the reins. And we really hope we are honoring you as the next generation of environmental law scholars and hopefully leaders. So today is about Nazeer and the work he does, at least this morning session, to really get us thinking and provoke us. And so it's really a privilege to introduce you to Nazeer. Nazeer Sonday is a regenerative farmer. He is an entrepreneur, and he self-describes as a reluctant activist and chairman of the Philippi Horticultural Area Food and Farming Campaign. The campaign is a community-based organization in the Philippi Horticultural Area in Cape Town that works to protect the 300,000 hectare Philippi Horticultural Area and the Cape Flats Aquifer, the city's food and water supply. Nazeer has an incredible farm at the Vegcop Polyculture Farm in Skarpkraal. And myself and some of the students who are here today have had the privilege of visiting and seeing how Nazeer lives his activism and how just through his farming, through his everyday life is transforming the city in a positive direction. And the farm is a beautiful learning, training, and knowledge production hive. You leave feeling like you are enriched just by being in the environment. And among other things, there are farm workers who are upskilling to become farmers. In addition to the farm that Nazeer runs, he's an Atlantic Fellow for Racial Equity. And in his role as a farmer and activist, he was the 2022 Gold Award winner in the Eco Champions Ecological Awards. And so he's going to talk to us a little bit about his experiences and the knowledge and activism that he's been involved in this role. And then we'll have a short panel discussion, and I will introduce them briefly after we have heard from Nazeer. So thank you, Nazeer, for being here with us. And we really look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Which video? Oh, it should.
Thank you. I'm not a public speaker. I'm very nervous. 3 hours of sleep last night preparing for this. This is not what I do. I'm a farmer. I'm a teacher, so I'll be farming. Thanks, Mel. I'm so happy to be here. We have, as a campaign, we have quite a important relationship that we have and we foster all the time with academics, research institutions, universities, and with the environmental law faculty with Melanie, and all in an effort to strengthen our arguments and strengthen our case and try to protect our farming area. And along the way we make lovely friends, and and we eat over organic food all the time. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys about 3 things. The one thing I'm going to show a video of a 4-minute video on the campaign's work, and I'm going to talk to you guys about the our just transition vision for the area. Why are we doing all of this? And then I'll speak a little bit about the challenges that we face. Okay, so let's start with the video, which is oops, sorry. Our area employs about 6,000 workers, but the really exciting thing, we can actually grow the 6,000 to 12,000 jobs and livelihoods if the land becomes available for us to farm it. Our area is so productive because we have an aquifer under our soil, and this aquifer water we use to irrigate our food crops. This aquifer makes us all drought-proof. There is so much water in the aquifer that it can contribute 30% to the city's capital water needs. We have also come to understand that actually our farming area, the 3,000 acres farmland, is the last remaining recharge area for the aquifer. facing the threat of losing 1,300 acres of best agricultural land with the best soils, best water, best microclimate for urban development and civic sand mining. Our biggest problem is that we're facing a city and a province that do not value our area in terms of food security, water security, and climate change resilience. And they are fast-tracking developments by skipping due processes, ignoring national laws, ignoring public participation, and this way they are helping developers. One of the threats is that the majority of the citizens in the city have absolutely no idea what the food comes from. And consequently, don't understand the risk that food savings will be losing the area for them. If people don't think that we are common together, food, our water, our environment, we stand to lose this generation. Our children, our grandchildren, look one day look at us and say, why we allow this to happen? What's happening here is that the politicians and developers are looking at short-term gains while we are losing our long-term benefits of the area. Okay, I just want to give you some stats on the area. This is from a 2018 study that was commissioned by the then Minister of Agriculture. Our area employs 3,000 workers, 30,000 livelihoods are directly related to our agricultural economy of our area. Production outcome is output is 200,000 tons of vegetables per annum. 30% of which totals about 30% of the city's vegetables consumed in the city. The interesting thing that we did a UWC study on was where was all these vegetables going, and it turns out that 60% of these vegetables are going actually into the working class and vulnerable communities. So it's directly, you know, impacting on food security in communities that are vulnerable, and 40% is going to the supermarkets. So I'll talk to you guys about our just land use vision, because after all, this is why we're doing what we're doing. You know, it's a lot. I mean, I've been doing this since 2008, actually. So it's almost 15 years. And so what gets us up in the morning is what we're fighting for. So the aquifer, which the video talked about, is really what makes our area unique, irreplaceable. And those are not my words. They're actually the city officials' word in the documents, the studies that they commissioned. So they themselves have declared the area as irreplaceable and unique. And this is what the aquifer looks like on the surface, but the aquifer, of course, is in the ground. It covers 630 square kilometers over the city. The aquifer makes our land drought-proof, and this is what the profile of the aquifer looks like. The Philippi Horticulture is central to the aquifer in two ways. One, it's the last remaining recharge zone of the aquifer, and two, it is where we are able to produce the food that we can. So really, farmers need the aquifer because it provides us with drought-proof farmlands, provides for food and health in the communities, livelihoods and jobs, and of course, critically, land restitution and stewardship. And then aquifer also needs us. There is a symbiotic relationship that we have with aquifer, because the farming landscape is the natural recharge of the aquifer, you know. The rest of the aquifer surface is covered in concrete and stone, and pavements and roofs, yeah, and urban developments. Farmer stewards and farming practices also enhance the aquifer, the seasonal wetlands which farmers allow to go wet in winter. Like now, we have 20% of our land. We have winter rains, not like you guys in the summer. 20% of our land is flooded, and that's our seasonal wetlands, the sand dunes, all contribute to the health of the aquifer. And then I want to talk to you guys about the just transition, in particular, the components of it in our view with regards to agriculture. I mean, a lot of people understand the energy transition that we need to go through, but we also need to go into a agricultural just transition. And because agriculture contributes a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, it's a very polluting food system, and so we have to transition from there. A latest study that I read showed that 50% of the CO2 emissions come from agriculture. There's a time when they mine the ingredients to make fertilizers, to transport, packaging, waste, land use, etc., right? 50%. It's a very interesting study. So agroecology has got, our just transition has got two components. One component is agroecology, and agriculture is really a way of farming, a lifelong study of the relationship between animals, plants, and the environment, and the application of agroecological practice in our farming. The other vision that we are engaged with right now, as you can see my t-shirt, in my fellowship, is to engage with the city to try to divert all the city's organic waste into the farming area, so we can compost that organic waste and then use it in soil, because that's actually organic fertilizer. So organic waste really is compost, if you look at it in a different way, but it's also organic carbon. It's also organic, and organic carbon converts to organic nitrogen for plant take-up. And so you see this lovely study by Dr. Christine Jones, who talks about the levels of organic carbon is directly related to the levels of organic nitrogen in the soil. The more carbon in the soil, the more nitrogen available for plants. The less carbon, less nitrogen. And out of this healthy soil comes healthy food and healthy people. This is a great example of how the food is different when farmed in healthy soil as opposed to farming with chemicals. If we're having spinach, for example, the big thing about spinach we all understand is, it's got a higher iron content, but actually to get the same amount of iron, you'll have to eat 14 spinach leaves from a farm using chemicals, compared to just one spinach leaf from a farm that has healthy soil to get the same amount of iron. And these are more and more of these studies are coming to light now. Big agri don't want you to know all this stuff, okay? Then, did I say? Yeah, did I have that one on? Yeah, okay, cool. So the other component about just transition is small-scale farming. There is this thing that small-scale, that the only way to farm is to farm large-scale, and this is how you feed the nation, you feed the world. But actually, 70% of the world's food comes from small-scale farmers. We're farming between 1 acre and 5 hectares. That's the reality of the situation. Oops. I'm jumping around. Here's a good example of how important small-scale farming is for an economy. In Thailand, who has half our land size, they have 16 million farmers, and they have 1% unemployment. Right? 16 million farmers, half our land size. We have double the land size. We have 32.2%, 32.5% unemployment, and we think industrialization and urbanization and modern cities is going to solve our unemployment problem. And the food that's grown in our country is just grown by 36,000 white commercial farmers. Just 36,000 white commercial farmers, right? So there's a big value in having small-scale farmers. Then our vision for the area in terms of how we want to see the area develop is we want to have lots of small farms bloom in our area. We want to have 13,000 direct jobs. We want 135,000 indirect jobs, 250,000 tons of organic. The reason why organic food is people can't afford it is because there are so few farmers engaging in farming organic. That's the problem. So we want to change that. Then finally, our challenges, like anything we have always had challenges, right? So So we're working on challenges. We're working on it for 16 years, and we've done a lot of work, as I'll share with you. So some of our major challenges is that we don't have long-term protection for our area. It's why I can't get up in the morning and go and farm. I have to get up in the morning and think, okay, I must go now to Wits, or I must go have a meeting with the City of Cape Town, or I must do this, or I must do that, because we don't have long-term protection. There is no food in municipal spatial planning. When municipalities plan cities, they don't understand that food is central into their planning. They have to plan for food, because COVID, the droughts, climate change, even taxi strikes, transport breakdowns, they all have exposed the vulnerability of the long-haul transport supply chain. And it's why a lot of the progressive cities are looking at protecting the peri-urban farming areas around the cities to have the basic food supply to the city, to make the city climate resilient. And we are an example of that as the Philippi Horticultural Area, but the city is looking at us and saying, oh, actually, this is a great area for another suburb, right? And we have, in our area, also we have historical and speculative land ownership that needs to change. We have an aging white farmer population where farmers are just 62 years old and are, not very far from actually retiring. And that, by the way, is also the national average. The national average of those 36,000 white farmers are growing our food, they are 62, right? So if you want to understand the real food crisis, we actually have a farmer crisis, not a food crisis. And then, of course, government's land reform has failed in our area. It hasn't produced the young farmers that we need. It hasn't changed the way farming need to take place to protect the land and the natural resources. And through that, the degradation of our green infrastructure continues. As you can see, that's a photo of our flooding. So these farms are not supposed to flood like this. We have a slurry system that regulates the water, but because of speculative land ownership and farmers not farming anymore, they've allowed the area to be degraded. With regard to the aquifer, this is from Karen Bosman, who noted that there are two important gaps in aquifer protection. Right? One is there's no protection for sensitive aquifers or aquifers that have socioeconomic importance, and that's our aquifer. It's of socioeconomic importance to every single person in the city. Water supply, food supply, ecosystem supply. And then when there is a reason that the authorities want to protect aquifers, they think of it as a reserve. So they will protect an aquifer as a reserve. If there's people there, they want to remove them. They want to remove people out of the reserve. Or if there's an area where there's no people, even better, we can put the reserve there. Actually, that's for me as a colonial type of conservation, right? We need to change our relationship with nature in wherever we are, right? So this is a matrix of our work over the last 16 years. We've had a number of development proposals for area, including a silica sand mine who wants to dredge 500 hectares out of the ground, take all the soil away. Council Glass wants to use that soil for your nice wine bottles that you're having, and beer bottles. I'm also guilty, by the way. And so, yeah, so if we mostly urban developments, urban sprawl developments, I would say, and silica sand mining. But we've stopped out of the 6, we've stopped 5 through our public participation processes. Rezone EIAs, heritage, water use license applications where we could participate. We've stopped 5 of those developments, and the 6 had gone to court in 2020, where we had a favorable outcome, where the court agreed with us that the developer did not properly assess the impact of the development on the aquifer, water scarcity, and climate and climate change. And so they sent it back to an appeal process, and they've now engaged in the appeal EIA and appeal rezone. Bradell, the National Minister of Environment, has just approved the EIA again, and we're waiting for the City of Cape Town to again approve the rezone, right? And so in 2025, we probably have to go to the High Court again to review that. I just want to show you a little video clip of the area where Consol Glass wants to mine silicon. Okay, so while we were challenging the developers and silica sand mining companies, we've also had a victory. We had actually two victories, the one in the High Court on the 500-hectare open city development, which proposes a whole new city in our area, 20,000 houses. You know, I don't know if anyone if you've been to Cape Town, the Canal Walk in Cape Town. Well, that's 50 hectares. We're talking about 500 hectares, 10 times that size in our area. Right, we destroy our area, but we also managed to stop a developer who had 94 hectares and who wanted to also do another development with shopping centers in the Kairos private school, etc. But since we won the in the week that we won a 2020 judgment, he threw in the towel and he said, "Well, he's not going to pursue it anymore." And his tactic was to bribe us, make us shareholders in the development. And this is what's happening, right? And then that didn't work. Brought the minister, I want to name the minister to my farm, said, I'll show you what influence I have. I'll bring the minister to your farm and I will make you and your farmers the primary beneficiaries for land reform, for a B deal on this 94 hectares, if you ignore our developer next door. He had 2 pieces of properties. And we said no, all right? But he sold the land to the developer and the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform bought the land. We applied for the land as a community, as a local community, but we were ignored. And so that's one of our issues now. It's not anymore that the developers and the mining companies are wanting unjust land use on our land, but also another Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. So, so the only way out of our predicament is resistance and the law. And it's the only way it's going to protect us from lawless politicians. And so we have 3 major challenges legally. One is to once and for all put an end to developments in the area with the open city development. And we're thinking about what legal route we might want to take for that. But the main thing for us is food security versus development over finite agricultural land. You know, we have only 14 million hectares in this country that we can produce our food on because we are a semi-arid, drought-prone country. And only 2 to 3% of that is high potential agricultural land, and we're losing it. We've lost over the last 30 years land the size of Kruger National Park. So not only are we losing farmers, we're also losing the land in which we are going to be that it's going to be providing our food. Right? So that's a big issue for us, losing finite agricultural land. And then we discovered to our horror that the developer was not really obliged to inform us about their application for water use license. And when we questioned them, they said, well, we didn't need to inform you, but actually we did do a public participation process. it was the time when we were engaging them with the EIA, right? So it made us understand that actually there is no real requirement for them to do a mandatory public participation process. And then, of course, we have a huge problem in the way the Department of Land Reform is allocating land. It often ignores local communities in the allocation of land, and it's causing a big problem for us. So we cannot pursue to protect our area because the protect our area and our natural resources and improve our economic situation, poverty, unemployment, inequality situation in our area, because they have decided they're going to put farmers there from somewhere else. We don't understand the local conditions. We don't even know what the PHS stands for, and it's a big mess. And so the beneficiary selection policy selection process really is based on a policy. And so the policy can be, the requirements can be massaged for a particular outcome. That's why the developer could bring the minister to me and say to me, we can get you this land. Because they can massage this thing, the process, the scorecard, and decide who's going to be the beneficiary. But those are three big challenges, legal challenges that we're facing, and I'm happy to engage with you. You know, we are doing the work, right? I mean, but new ideas about how we can approach this. It's always good for us to hear, and that's why I want to engage with the ELA at this conference, because these are valuable ideas. And then, of course, once we have the good ideas, legal ideas, then of course then we have to find the advocates to do the work. Okay? But that's separate. You know, we found our advocate to do our first job. We didn't have a penny in the bank. He actually came to my farm and said, "I hear you guys are against housing." And when he left, an hour later, he became our advocate. So we'll find advocates, but we need the right advocates. Thank you.
Thank you to Nazeer for sharing those experiences and that knowledge. And I think yesterday Tracy was speaking to the students about how our work needs to hold the line and on the environmental laws we have. And we need to not only hold it, but then push it in the right direction. And Nazeer's work is all about how to hold the line so that he can provide food, so that the community around him can have livelihoods, and so that he can have his livelihood. So it's really a question of water justice, of economic justice, and of human rights. And I think that that's a good entry point for the conference. And so thank you for sharing all your knowledge with us. We're now going to move into a conversation about some of this knowledge. So I'll just stop the presentation. And we have with us online Kirsty Carden. And Kirsty joins us from the University of Cape Town and is part of the Future Water project that runs at the University of Cape Town. Kirsty sorry, I'm struggling to find her bio. I'll find it in a moment. Meanwhile, oh, here we go. Kirsty has 35 years of experience working in academia, and as well as for the government and the private sector in the field of urban water management in South Africa. Kirsty's an associate professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of Cape Town, and is the director of UCT's Transdisciplinary Research Institute, Future Water. And her research interests include integrated approaches geared towards sustainable urban water management and transitions towards water sensitive and resilient cities. And so we're really grateful for Kirsty joining us from UCT with all the expertise that you bring. Then we have, in addition, Nicola Irving. Nicola is a public interest lawyer based in Johannesburg and an associate in the Social Impact Department at Norton Rose Fulbright. Nicola's focus areas are environmental, constitutional, administrative, and child law. And she has considerable experience working on various pro bono and public interest litigation matters, including environmental justice and animal rights matters. And Nicola has her master's degree from the University of Pretoria, having focused on the transformative potential of climate litigation in South Africa. She's strongly guided by the belief that individual action can make a difference. And one of her favorite quotes from Dr. Seuss's The Lorax captures this ethos: unless someone you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And then we have Kyle Vanhyde, who's a senior project manager in the water unit at the University of Johannesburg's Process, Energy and Environmental Technology Station. And Kyle is a PhD candidate as well in environmental management, also at the University of Johannesburg. And his research primarily focuses on the detection, transportation, and monitoring of pollution in freshwater aquatic environments and strategies for resilience and rehabilitation. So Kyle works closely with communities, government, NPOs, and NGOs to address issues in rivers, streams, and dams, primarily in the Gauteng region. So we have this panel to engage some questions that arise from Nazeer's presentation. And so I'm really grateful to all of you, and Nazeer will also participate in the discussion that follows. The first question is directed primarily to Nicola, and raises the question: from a legal practitioner and expert witness point of view, what are the challenges of litigating water justice cases? And of course, Nazeer has told them from the activist point of view. Perhaps you could share your insights.
Thank you. So I'm sure for the legal practitioners in the room who have done pro bono work, you'll be able to relate to this. But it's a really heartbreaking obstacle as a lawyer representing pro bono clients who approach us for assistance on a variety of matters. But they are inevitably extremely under-resourced. And these cases turn on the strength of the expert evidence before the courts. I mean, a tragic example, although it was subsequently remedied, was the Border Deep Sea Angling Association case that dealt with, it was the first challenge to the seismic testing on the Wild Coast. And they lost as a result of not having sufficient proof of the interconnected social, environmental, kind of climate-related challenges that they were putting before the courts, and the court deemed their arguments to be speculative. And so I think that's the biggest challenge is working with clients who are inevitably some of the most vulnerable members of our society, trying to guide them as best we can in fundraising efforts. And fundraising takes time and it delays litigation processes. It's a stop-start. You have to raise funds, you get enough to do like preliminary testing and a preliminary report. And then more fundraising needs to be done, and then another phase of testing is carried out. So that's I think the biggest challenge that we face. And I think the courts are still, they're still grappling with rights-based approaches to environmental law. So it's a balancing act between like a procedural and formalistic approach to these kinds of issues, but wanting to bring in rights-based approaches to environmental law. Yeah, because I mean, it matters. It matters a lot more than the procedural aspects of these cases, I would argue. And yeah, I think from a legal practitioner's point of view, I think the issue of conflicts of interest are a huge challenge to litigating these kinds of cases. I mean, environmental law is inevitably like diametrically opposed to most law firms' interests. So I think when communities and clients approach us, and prospective clients approach us, we have to run it through a conflict system. And I mean, personally, I've been conflicted out of many instructions. Prof knows this, and it's just heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking because I mean, we've got the resources. I mean, within reason, but we're a relatively well-capacitated team. But owing to conflicts of interest, it's just an automatic no. So you have to pass the client on to someone else who you hope will be able to do justice to their case. But I think for me, those are the biggest challenges. It's the fundraising, it's and I think that a lot of communities, I mean, Nazeer, you have done an amazing job of mobilizing your community, but I think a lot of communities still struggle with properly mobilizing. And that's a role that I will address this later on, but I mean, as a lawyer, trying to instill kind of more formal organizational values that would be appealing to donors is something that we see is beneficial to our clients. But I think without proper mobilization and without the appearance of legitimacy, a lot of these kinds of communities and clients just don't receive the attention and funding that they need. So yeah.
Thanks. Carl, would you like to add anything from a sort of expert witness point of view?
Well, I think off the bat, it has to be stated that I generally keep far away from lawyers as is physically possible. We have worked with lawyers in the past, particularly in some of the mining areas around Johannesburg. But you know, to answer Nico's point, there is a large issue around mobilizing communities. And particularly on that, we have a lot of communities that work in silos, and people overlapping with no idea as to what's going on. From an expert witness point of view, you know, it's really tough. You know, as a scientist, data is life. So all decisions are made, any recommendations are made based on the data. That's just how we work. And so I think, you know, my colleagues, myself, we do not like to be witnesses or involve ourselves at all. We are funded by government to address these issues. And so it goes against what we do to be part of litigation against government. That being said, there is a place for it. There definitely is a place for it. There's multiple paths to reach the same point. Some take longer, some are shorter, some are more effective. But ultimately, the goal is the same.
Yeah. Nazeer, do you have any response to what you've heard so far?
No, I think they're right. There is always a problem with mobilizing communities, because communities have, you know, I was sitting in the Uber this morning, and the Uber driver, a very wise guy, was saying to me, you know, the problem that you have is that in Cape Town, that people are so poor, they don't have time for politics. Yeah, they have to think about the job, what to eat next, you know, how to get the next meal. So they are that situation in the arena that because in the farming community, the farm workers and the labor tenants are the most vulnerable, the most marginal, and so they are, and they're also often abused by the powers. You know, one of the things that councillors have been saying is that, you know, the campaign doesn't want you to have a house. They're against housing. You know, and these are people who are living in labor tenants with no tenure rights. Farm workers who are living on farms and so on. So, and then we have a broader landless farmer community that support the work that we do, and they farm on scraps of land across the city and the periphery and so on. So we are always trying to expand our support base and our membership, and then through that manage the conflicts and tensions in the and we also to overcome the problems of mobilizing. We also mobilize beyond just the farm workers, farmers, and the landless, and the farming community, but also in a wider sector. So we have lots of NGOs and community-based organizations and other organizations who support the work that we do and who help us mobilize, get the word out.
So I think one of the core things that comes out of the conversation is the value of engaging across disciplines and also across academia and practice. I just want Nazeer to share one fact with everyone before we move on to Kirsty. How much are the properties in the Oaklands development supposed to be? So per unit?
Well, Oaklands, when he bought the land, he paid 36 million rands for that land, 500 hectares, right? 36 million rands. Because the land belonged to white property owners who weren't farming there anymore. They just own land, you know, like much of what the land ownership in the country looks like, agricultural land. And then he formed a company and sold the land to himself for 200 million rands. And so he inflated the value of the land. And then he went to, this is where it gets a bit muddled. He went to the trade unions, pension funds. And he had $500 million pension fund investments in the development. But they're not worker pension funds, they are management level pension funds on the 5 Cosatu unions. And now, because I did that, he has escalated the land value from under 100,000 rands a hectare to now almost 2 million rands a hectare. Right? Since we won the court case, the land price dropped because the second developer we sold the land to the department sold it at 250,000 rands a hectare. So we were very pleased that the court case dropped the land value. But that really influences the price.
And the housing that they're going to develop is not low cost RDP housing, right?
No. None of the housing proposed, I mean, Century City is hardly low cost housing, right? Okay. And we can't keep low cost housing down now because we have a very high water content. And so you have to put millions of rands of concrete down before you can get out of the water to be able to build anything.
Kirsty, do you have anything to add on this point? It'd be great to hear from you.
Hi, thank you, Melanie. I don't think I have anything specific to add. I'm not directly involved with sort of legal processes and expert witness, but I would just very briefly say that it is about sort of being able to contribute into an argument that is fair and just and that is non-partisan, objective, for, you know, to be able to provide information on broader sustainability or resilience or development needs that come across in a way that, you know, we can do that in a fair way. I'll talk about a little bit more on the next point.
Great. So I think we can start with Kirsty on the next question, which is how can the academic community support activists like Nazeer to advance water justice, both within and beyond the courts and other tribunals?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, as I've suggested, it's mainly around the sort of provision of evidence and data. That's what we as academics can provide, and hopefully can do that in an objective way. It's not always the case, but certainly we're coming at things probably from a slightly different angle than most people working in the land itself. But of course, more and more, and as you've heard, the research that we do at Future Water is a transdisciplinary research. It's geared towards transitions around water resilience. And more we have to do that in a way that engages in this transdisciplinary research with active engagement and involvement with local residents, and is focused on locally relevant outcomes. So not only going in there and asking people what they think, but actually stopping right at the very beginning in the design of projects to try and understand where those intersection points are. So hopefully, in that case, we can start providing useful data, useful evidence that can support the type of activism that's coming across around the issues that Nazeer has raised. And, you know, much of the work that we do in terms of water justice in the context of addressing climate and environmental and development issues often entails consideration of what's now broadly known as nature-based solutions. So building green infrastructure into cities, trying to connect not only the open sort of aquifer recharge areas that are so important in places like the PHA, but connecting those through networks of blue-green infrastructure throughout the city. So we're also looking for those types of opportunities. You know, we need to look for the implementation of green infrastructure options in a way that there are no unintended consequences, or that you limit unintended consequences, particularly amongst marginalized communities. So, you know, how do we stop the, how do we think about those trade-offs that need to be considered across housing, across biodiversity, across food security, across water security, all of those sorts of things. So that we're trying now to bring into our research, so that the research is not only how much water can we release from an infiltration experiment, for example, but how can we limit economic losses, or how can we limit economic burdens to people who may be living in the periphery of these areas of nature-based solutions, or of these transitions to water resilience, where we're trying to ensure water security for people. So yeah, and then lastly, it's so important for us to be able to develop and provide the measurement, the metrics for success in this type of field, so that we can not only assess, as I say, volumes of water or water quality, but look at social and political change and some of those consequences that may occur as a result of these implementations.
Thank you. Kyle, do you have anything to add?
Then,
Okay, go ahead.
so I think instead of boring you with water quality details and that kind of stuff that's not necessary, I think I'll give you a storied example that will work out really nice. So UJPs, we receive funding from Parliament to address environmental issues that are mainly within Johannesburg. We will do other areas, but with SMEs, with NGOs, with NPOs, and see how we can resolve these issues and move forward to the future. So I think a wonderful example that would be particularly relevant today is a community in the southwest of Johannesburg, located between several mines. The streams that flow through these communities go past 3 schools, mosques, playgrounds, and areas that the community used to enjoy and engage in. The river is now pretty much a soup of various different chemicals and pathogens and that kind of stuff. And so how do we support local communities? How do we do this? Well, what we do high-level water quality sampling. One of the ways is called next-generation sequencing, where we analyze DNA and RNA found within the water. We can identify microbiology within that water. So, for example, the various strains of E. coli, is there salmonella? High-level kind of stuff. It's not what we present to the community, but that's what we use. We then do chemical sampling as well. Are there additives that come from paint factories? What kind of industries do these chemicals come from? We then use GIS and remote sensing to look at where the sources of the rivers are and the various industries. And we map out industry along the water sources in relation to the pollution that we have in these water sources. From there, we can say, cool, we have 5 paint factories along the stream, and we have high levels of chemicals which suggest that paint factories are disposing straight into the water source. How do you go from we know there's pollution to something needs to be done. Well, one route is the legal route, but generally we try and avoid that. And what we instead do is we go directly to the industry and we say, hey guys, we have the evidence. We know from the local community that you are polluting. We now have the data from various different aspects to show that you're polluting. How can we work together to make your systems more efficient so that you don't dump into the water? Because as we know, one of the primary reasons why people are dumping, where it's macro debris or chemical pollutants, is it's cheaper to dump into the river than it is to go to a landfill site, than to dispose of these items correctly. And so it's a very holistic management process that we go through. And that's generally how we support local communities. We try and give them as much evidence, as much data, as much insight as possible for them to make an informed decision about their community and the way that they want to move forward. Right? Some communities will say we want to pursue legal action. Other communities, another one that we've dealt with, they've pursued legal action for the past several years, almost 10 years. Nothing has happened. However, with the data that we have now been producing, the mapping of pollution sources, the geology, the hydrology, and understanding how the whole environment works and how the pollutants land up there, now we're working with the city to address that. Now we're working with the mining companies to address that, because we're not saying, hey, you are the polluter. It's your problem. You're going to fix this up. We've had that conversation 10 million times. It doesn't work. No one's here to point fingers. That's not our purpose. That's not my purpose as a scientist. I'm here to address problem. And so with that kind of dialogue, we generally find that companies, industries are far more open to discussion, especially when you have the point of, well, if you don't discuss it, things are going to go really bad for you, because you have all the data to suggest a high level data, not a, sounds bad, but a citizen science water quality test that can be easily argued against at various points as to why they're effective. We have high level sampling that is only recently been undertaken. It's global first. And so that kind of data is super important into making these kinds of important decisions and bringing all the parties to the table. And I think it's also important to note that within the local community, there needs to be government engagement, particularly at that local scale. Because without government, a lot of the issues cannot be addressed. A lot of them do stem from government. There are wastewater treatment works that are over capacity, sewage pipes that are leaking into the river. And then how do you fix a sewage pipe? Well, I need the local municipality to fix it. It's the only way. And so there has to be collaboration. Not to say that you should bend over backwards for them, but there needs to be some kind of active dialogue where we address and we understand that there are funding problems. We understand that there are institutional problems, but it's not everyone. And it's not all the time. There is progress being made, and it's not doom and gloom.
Thanks. I'm going to give Nazeer just a minute to indicate from your perspective what can the academic community do and practitioners who are in the room. And then we'll move on to our last question before we open it to the floor.
Yeah, exactly that. Academics and institutions have been very helpful in our argument. In our case, we had dialogue with the developer, wanted a certain outcome, which was against what we wanted. So we tried to pursue that avenue. It didn't go anywhere. Luckily, in that case, the developer just gave up the court case and sold the land. But the big developer and other developers have done the same. They've given up, but it's not as if they've gone away. They still hold the land, and then they're waiting now for an outcome in the High Court to see how we're dealing with the Oakland developer, which is the big presidential developer, which is pushing the boundaries. And I had a meeting with the CEO of the company. Yeah, I had a meeting with them. I said to them, look, and I usually had a meeting with the society shop stewards. But they had great influence on how the investments gets made in the pension funds. So we tried a number of things to get there. And so the legal route is one route, and the other route is strengthening our arguments, right? And the arguments to strengthen the academics and the contributions. There's so many examples of it, right? So many examples, you know, over the years. And we've used those in our arenas where we engage with environmental impact assessments, rezones, heritage appearances. We are now in 2 water tribunals where we argue out of court, you know, opposite the developer and the mining companies around the water use license. And so we're not experts, so we depend on experts to give us the information, then we can present our arguments. So yeah, it's critical. It's always been critical, and it will be critical for us in the future.
Thank you. And then our last question before we open it to the floor, we'll start with Nicola, is what pathways are available to access expert evidence and for participation in decision-making that can influence water justice beyond the courtroom?
I think a lot of it has, I mean, already kind of entered the territory, but I mean, what is very clear is like these are very complex problems that require complex and holistic solutions. And I mean, for us, when we're dealing with communities, I mean, litigation is treated as a last resort unless it's urgent, which we will gladly bring and we're very good at. But it's very much treated as a last resort. And it's really important for us to work with our clients to, and I intimated this earlier, is establishing legitimate clients that are going to garner the respect from politicians, from business, from the courts, eventually, if it needs to get there. So, I mean, for us, we work on kind of corporate governance and like just corporate hygiene for our clients. Even if they're a voluntary association, just establishing some degree of legitimacy, because that, you know, entices donors. And also if we approach experts to act on a pro bono or a contingency basis, they feel a lot more comforted by the fact that there's a real client, you know? Even though we work on the ground with the communities and we're very much aware that the clients are real and these issues are real, you know, the law and business, it's kind of like one and the same language a lot of the time. So, yeah, it's about, you know, boosting the strength of the communities in that way. I think, yeah, working with our clients to forge strategic partnerships with the right kinds of entities, so media houses, interest groups, other environmental lawyers who are experts in other fields. And then just leveraging off these networks and asking for help. I mean, the worst someone can say is no. And I mean, encouraging our clients to conduct their own, you know, rigorous advocacy campaigns. So press releases, interviews, using social media, protests, gatherings, just to create groundswell around these issues. I'm working on, it's an air quality matter at the moment with a huge water component. And our clients, I mean, they've been, you know, trying to resolve this issue since 2016 with the municipality. And it's gotten to the point now where, I mean, engagement is getting them nowhere. And people are suffering from respiratory diseases, cancers. Yeah, I mean, the infant mortality rates in the area are high. So yeah, and I've seen the benefits of them mobilizing as a community and using all of these platforms. I mean, they've raised hundreds of thousands of rands now, and have thousands and thousands of people who are part of this effort. And yeah, that's
yeah. Thank you. So I think from the practitioner side, it's really about a great example of how to support clients. From the academic side, we see the need for the research to be accessible to communities. And so Tracy-Lynn's water justice tracker that you'll talk to us about at some point And the work that Future Water is doing is really important, as well as Kyle's work in making knowledge available to communities. Kirsty, could you share with us for a few minutes your thoughts on this topic of
Yes.
pathways to support communities?
Sure, thanks everybody. And I'm probably not going to say terribly much more than what has been said already, but I think it's again about, and Nazeer's comment resonated with me about no idea where, you know, people have no idea where their food comes from. And of course, it's the same for water. They have no idea where their water comes from, you know, somewhere out of a tap. So it's about building that knowledge and awareness, particularly around these different environmental challenges and our collective responsibility. So how do we facilitate action for sort of community mobilization, really? What can we do as researchers in terms of enabling locally led activism? And that's generally through facilitating the civic organization, trying to help them to link up with organizations that can provide funding. It goes back to this just transitions idea that we can't offload responsibility onto people who shouldn't have to do that. So, you know, I think it's enabling through the different types of activities that we do, and ensuring that the knowledge awareness raising activities are done in an appropriate way that starts building that collective responsibility. You know, how do we ensure that people understand that actions have consequences, certainly in terms of environment? So polluting the environment with chemicals, or with, we see it in our stormwater pond research that we do, you know, people use stormwater ponds to dump used motor oil and all of the rest. So it's what is our collective footprint and impact. And once we have tried to get that message out, it's also building those pathways through engaging with policy, through, you know, thinking about how we can influence different ways of thinking together with local partners.